Welcome back, my students, to a brand new episode of Comic Class. In today's lesson, guys, we're going to be going over a versus battle of the Sinister Sits versus the Sits Passive Pain. And yeah, this is going to be a fun and interesting video to go over. And before we get started, the Sinister Sits members we're going to be putting together in this video are Mysterio, Sandman, Rhino, Hobgoblin, Electro, and Dr. Octopus, or Doc Doc for short. And we're going to be pitting them against the Sits Passive Pain. So, like I said, it's going to be an interesting video. All of them have very unique and interesting powers. And we're going to see if the Sinister Sits can actually take on and defeat the Sits Passive Pain, which is one of Naruto's franchise's strongest villains. And yeah, so without further ado, let's jump right into today's versus battle. Let's get started. So the first thing we need to look over is the Sits Passive Pain. Now, the Sits Passive Pain have 6 different members, each with a specific ability, and some of these members are more dangerous than others. When it comes to stuff like the Animal Path, which lets the user summon a wide variety of creatures, that's going to be kind of troublesome for some members of the Sinister Sits, but not all of them. And we'll go over that when we go over the strongest members. And we also have the Human Path, which can remove a person's soul. So if the Human Path were to grab any of the Sinister Sits members, it would basically be game over for whichever member he were to grab and touch. I think it is important to note that when it comes to the Human Path and using him as a win condition against some of the members, it was shown that Naruto, when he was getting his soul ripped out, was able to withstand it for a good amount of time. So, considering how strong some of these members are, they might be able to one-shot this Path of Pain if it tries to steal their soul, or removes their soul from their body. So, but the other ability it has is being able to read a person's mind if it touches you as well. So that could be useful in the battle, but more than anything, this is going to be kind of like one of the fodder paths. The Ashura Path is not going to be a factor. Not the Ashura Path. The Preta Path is not going to be a factor. The Preta Path is basically the one that can absorb all forms of chakra, including most ninjutsu. None of the Sits paths, none of the Sinister Sits basically use ninjutsu. Ninjutsu is separated from actual physical elements. This was shown even in Boruto with Ishiki when he tried to absorb Kashin Koji's fire, which was actually natural fire, so he wasn't able to absorb it. So even in Boruto, the sequel series to Naruto Shippuden's story, follows that logic that natural elements are not the same as ninjutsu created elements. So they will not be able to absorb things like Electro's electricity and thunderbolts, as well as other things like Sandman's sand and stuff like that. So, more than anything, the Preta Path also is a fodder path. We have the Naraka Path and the Outer Path, which will be very important to making sure that the Sits Passive Pain continue to be the Sits Passive Pain, and that they can work together to basically revive the other pains if they were to be killed off. During Naruto's fight with them, we did see that the Naraka Path and the Outer Path were outsmarted, and Naruto was able to take those out once he was told that they had the ability to revive. So it's very possible that during the battle, if it's a sits on sits, which is more likely to happen, they're going to be taken out anyway, and if even one of them is taken out, I believe it stops the revival process. So it's very possible that these two also be fodder paths. So the only 2 paths that are very dangerous, with the exception of, like I said, the Animal Path, which can summon different animals and creatures. Giant animal creatures, basically, with the Animal Path, might be able to put some damage on the Sinister Sits, but the big 2 are the Ashura Path and the Deva Path. And the Ashura Path, which is the mechanical path, basically can shoot things like missiles and has mechanized limbs and armor and stuff like that. It basically has metal. It looks like it has like a metal type body. So he probably can take a good amount of damage, but he was one-shotted by Naruto right when the fight started while he was in Sage mode. And we'll get into why that's very important on the all Sits paths and their durability when we go over the Sinister Sits. But we also have the Deva Path, which is the main path, which is known as Tendo Path as well. Tendo Pain. and he is able to do like a type of like gravity type of attack with his almighty push and the universal pull in order, and he is able to push things like push objects or people, but also able to pull things in. And he's the most impressive of the Six Paths of Pain, and was able to fight hand to hand with Naruto until he used his Sage Mode and just knocked Pain back, and hit him with like such force that he just sent him flying backwards. So Tendo Pain, the main Pain, really couldn't fight hand to hand with Naruto when he was in Sage Mode. This is very important as well. Now, after we have gotten through all these paths, it is important to note that Pain does have a type of trump card with the Planetary Devastation. We don't know if the Sinister Six will be able to break out of that. But considering that Tendo only did that when he was pushed completely by Six Tails Naruto, it's very possible he won't even have the opportunity to use the Planetary Devastation in this battle with the Sinister Six. Now that we've gone through all the different paths of Pain and which ones are fodder and which ones will probably put up a fight, let's go over the Sinister Six and their abilities and so forth. So we're going to go through them in order, basically, and just talk about what each one can do, and at the end of it, talk about how I see this fight going down. First one we're going to talk about is Sandman. Sandman's pretty interesting. The battlefield that I thought we would put him in is where Naruto basically fought the Six Paths of Pain. Now, I'm gonna put it to where Sandman basically can't just make himself a giant, and utilize the ground that they're basically fighting on, that battlefield that Naruto fought Pain on, because then it would be a really big advantage to Sandman. So more than likely, I'm just putting him in his base form with the amount of sand he has usually in his base. Now, even with his base form, he has the ability to make himself soft or solid, basically, with his sand. We see this multiple times when Spider-Man tries to punch him. He's able to turn his body and his arms and legs and just any part of his body into weapons. He usually does this by making his hands and arms into like giant like hammer like objects, and basically tries to like squash Spider-Man. He even hit Spider-Man in the head once in one of his fights with them, and Spider-Man himself stated that he would have been knocked out if he didn't have his spider strength. So his durability, like his overall weight, is ridiculous, Sandman, especially when he starts gaining sand from other places and increases his size and stuff like that. Now, Sandman has a massive weakness in that there's a core piece of his body inside of all this sand, and if he does become giant, you are able to find this core piece of his being. If you take it out of him, he basically falls apart and crumbles. So if there was a way to find this little piece, it is possible to defeat Sandman pretty easily. He's also weak to water, so if Pain were to use a type of water style, he might be able to take Sandman out. Sandman does confirm in one of his fights with Spider-Man that you have to have enough water to overpower his sand. It can't be equal, it can't be lower than it. So it has to be a good amount, so it's not confirmed if the water style would actually defeat basically Sandman unless it was a massive water style jutsu and stuff like that, making Sandman useless and basically out of the fight, taking him out of the fight. So we do need to mention it though, because it is a possibility. Going to the next member, we have the Rhino. Rhino is ridiculous. He was able to basically tank almost any attack that Spider-Man gave him. He's able to block and not be damaged by gunfire. His height is basically just has some bounce off of him. He's able to break out of a cable car from a train station, so that's impressive. He basically is able to fight Spider-Man while Spider-Man's not holding back that much. And it was even a scene in one of their fights where Spider-Man basically got hit by the Rhino in like a surprise attack, and he wasn't kind of like guarding for it. And Spider-Man was basically out of the game for a few panels. He basically couldn't do nothing. He was basically just reeling from the attack. Considering all the things Spider-Man has done, especially since in one panel during this fight, during this issue when this happened, I believe that he actually bent metal with his hands easily without even trying. And this is consistent to how Spider-Man is shown in these early issues of his career, in that he was able to lift a giant machinery type thing basically off of him, which has been calculated to be thousands of tons. by people that have calculated it during the issue. I think it was issue 33. And this is after that, so Spider-Man has had more time to practice and train. And after getting hit by the Rhino, he basically was out of the game for a few panels, and probably could have died had the Rhino hit him again with that same type of force. So that's very important. And Rhino is able to snap Spider-Man's webbing like it's nothing, and Spider-Man has tried to web Rhino up pretty goodly, and it just doesn't work. He just rips out of it. Which is a very important when we get to the Dr. Octopus section. I'll explain why this is an impressive feat even more. But yeah, basically, Rhino is just unstoppable to Spider-Man most of the time. And in one of the stories that I had read, there was a feat with Rhino to where Spider-Man had built a suit specifically to fight the Rhino and endure his attacks, and Rhino still ripped through Spider-Man's suit, his battle suit, made to fight against Rhino. Now, Rhino had gotten electrocuted during this encounter, and he was completely fine afterwards, even smiling on the ground after being electrocuted. So, stuff like Lightning Style might work for a little bit, but it's not going to take Rhino out of the game. Considering there's no reason to believe that Spider-Man was holding back during this moment, because he knew they had to take Rhino out of the picture, basically to try to save the world. And I don't mean like to kill him, but to basically knock him unconscious, and it still didn't work. And the final thing for Rhino is that he actually had a moment in the story arc to where Spider-Man again is wearing this battle type suit that he made specifically for the Rhino in mind, and wasn't able to move Rhino from holding Silver Sable and him in a certain spot so that they can both drown in Dr. Octopus's base that was going underwater. Basically, he was filling up with water, and they were gonna both die by drowning. And Spider-Man basically tries all his might and says that, that the Rhino is too strong. This Spider-Man, way into his career, he's gotten way stronger than the days in his early career where he lifted that giant machinery, which, like I said, was calculated to be probably thousands of tons. And, it's just crazy, and he still couldn't do nothing to the Rhino. So Rhino, as far as the powerhouses go, is going to be very important to the battle and for the Sinister Six to win the fight against the Pains. Going to the next one, we have Mysterio. Mysterio is probably the second or third most important person in this battle. Mysterio has different ways to mess with the Six Paths of Pain. One of them is his hallucinations. Basically, he makes a gas that makes you hallucinate. And this has been shown to be able to work on even people of regular status, but also people like the Avengers also got affected by Mysterio's gas. That was shown multiple times. Mysterio's regular, type of like holograms or holotech actually works as well, in that there was a scene where Hawkeye basically tried to attack Mysterio, and he made it seem as if he hadn't been tagged by Hawkeye's attack, but Hawkeye basically was seeing an illusion, and he actually did tag Mysterio. This could be very important for doing some mind games with pain, and considering this isn't a genjutsu, this is straight up like gas type attacks, messing with your senses, as well as, his holographic technologies, his holobots, I believe is what they're called, or holocubes. They won't be able to be messed with genjutsu and stuff like that. Or his Renegon wouldn't be able to break it, because it's not something that's actually like an illusion. It's actually a physical image that's being projected. The most important thing, like I said, is that these things have worked on the Avengers. His holotech or his gas. I believe it was his holotech that worked, but it might have been his gas. But both of these are options that he can use on the Six Paths of Pain. But his most important one probably is his ability to use a type of smoke screen. Now, this smoke screen kind of messes with Spider-Man's spider sense. But the smoke itself is the important part. Because, Six Paths of Pain don't have a spider sense, but they do and are prone to being weak towards smoke because it affects the Six Paths vision. I believe that Jiraiya tried to do this, and Naruto did this during his battle with Pain as well. And it's a good way to block their vision so that you can attack one at a time. So in a team battle where Mysterio's not fighting by himself, but with the other Sinister Six members, the other five, members in the group, it's going to be pretty impressive, and it could win them the match with the Sinister Six if he does it right and basically is able to trick them into either attacking themselves, like the Avengers were doing, or and it's not just the Avengers; he did it on other people as well, other superheroes. So it's very effective, his hallucination gas, but and his hollow cubes and stuff like that, his hollow tech. But he should be able to use it on Sid's passive pain. So unless they get Mysterio out really early, it's going to be very troublesome and definitely one of the more important members to this fight. The next person is the Hobgoblin. The Hobgoblin has two very important factors, kind of like three. His first thing is his pumpkin bombs. His pumpkin bombs have the power to basically destroy an entire building. Now, I think it was a regular building that it destroyed, not a large one like a skyscraper. But even a regular building is a ridiculous amount of TNT, and definitely has the power, considering what we saw with the Razin Shuriken as well as the Rizengon, being able to kill Pains in single hits. It's very possible that these pumpkin bombs could one-shot a Pain if he gets tagged by them, and that's if he gets tagged by one of them and not like a ton of pumpkin bombs basically falling on one Pain. So this is very important. He also has his laser beam attacks that come out of his fingers. I think they're called like sparkle beams or sparkle blasts. And these things have the ability to basically vaporize and fry a regular human. That I believe the dude was a regular human that has been shown to be vaporized. He might have been a superhuman with superhuman qualities. I'm not very sure. But it's safe to say that people have gotten tagged by them and they didn't vaporize. So if you have a certain amount of durability, you're not going to be vaporized, but it is going to hurt, it's going to stun you. And that's mainly their main purpose, other than vaporization, is to stun the opponent. The Green Goblin used this as well during his fight with Spider-Man. He also would do the type of stun blast, magical beam stuff. If you haven't already, go check out my Spider-Man run reviews that I have on my channel. We recently covered a battle between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, and he basically did this type of stuff against Spider-Man in that story as well. But the Hobgoblin also has the abilities. Their main attribute is that he has a jet glider, his Goblin glider, and it basically allows them to fly in the air, which is a massive advantage in the Naruto universe, being that a lot of Naruto characters cannot fly. This is very important. As far as what the Hobgoblin can tank, he can constantly tank hits from people like Spider-Man. Basically, Ghost Rider has hit Hobgoblin as well, and is kind of like hell-bent, pun intended, to basically take out the Hobgoblin and make him, unconscious and stuff like that. And he takes multiple hits from Ghost Rider. I don't think this is the main Ghost Rider. I think it's the second Ghost Rider. But Ghost Rider is no joke. And yeah, Hobgoblin took multiple hits from him, which is very impressive. Now, we do need to speak on the amount of power that his Sparkle Blast basically has. That there was a scene in one of these stories where a doctor, a professor, basically puts the special stuff that he has basically into a titanium steel safe. And with a couple of blasts, or like a single blast with his 5 fingers, he was able to basically pop off this steel safe and basically just melt it off of it, kind of like do an explosion. And this is crazy because in order for this to happen, he would have to probably come to close to the ability to melt steel, which would be about 25,000 Fahrenheit, which is crazy. Now, like I said, the Hobgoblin, very important, probably the second most important member in this fight because of his ability to fly, giving us such a big advantage, and with Pumpkin Bombs with the ability to have building level destructive power or destructive capacity, basically is very important to winning this fight. Going to the next person in the Sinister Six, we have Electro. Now, Electro is very important. Electro's attacks should be about lightning level. Naruto characters at the point of the Pain Invasion arc, these type of higher tier Naruto characters should be around the lightning to a little faster than lightning or faster than lightning range. So Electro's attacks should be able to tag the Pains, considering that Being at that level doesn't mean you can't be tagged by something that's a little slower if it's in a rapid concession. Basically, like, they're doing it over and over and over again, or they're hitting you in multiple areas at once. You just don't have the time to dodge every single attack. This is very possible. Electro has a magnetic field sometimes that he's able to use, and this can knock back ordinary humans. It might not work on people like the Pains that have higher durability than a regular human, but it is safe to mention it. He's also been able to tank multiple hits. He has impressive durability due to his electric body basically powering up all of his base stats, like his speed, his strength, and his durability. One important thing about Electro that we need to talk about is that Electro, when he uses his powers, usually doesn't just have a straight line of electricity like you see in different cartoons, anime, manga, comics, stuff like that, TV shows. He basically has the ability to knock all these electric bolts basically all around his body. It makes him very hard to dodge his attacks. Like I said, he's fought Spider-Man multiple times in different comics, basically, different comic battles that he's had. And he does have a weakness to water, which is very important, and could be a winning condition for the Sith's passive pain if they use water against him. But if it goes the other way and Electro tads one of the Pains, it's very possible that he's gonna one-shot them. And this is due to there being a fight between Spider-Man and Electro, to where Electro throws a thunderbolt or a lightning bolt, and it basically melts an entire metal like container thing that Spider-Man threw at him. This is like pure steel, and he basically just melted it in an instant with one single lightning bolt. Like I said, in order to do this feat, Electro would have to be putting out 25,000 Fahrenheit, basically, in order to do this feat and melt the steel as fast as he did in one single shot. So that's crazy, and I highly doubt that the Sith's passive pain could deal with that type of electricity and that type of heat going through their body, considering that the Sith's pass, basically, Tendo Pain, which was the main path, didn't want to get hit by Kakashi's Raikiri, and he had the Ashura path basically taint the hit for him, showing that he didn't really feel that he could taint the hit, or he couldn't dodge the hit either, showing that Electro's attacks should be able to tag the Pains, even the main one to no pain, considering that Kakashi, when using Raikiri, should be as fast as lightning, because it puts your body to around those speeds. So it's very possible, even if he is a little faster than lightning, shouldn't be that much, so Electro's attacks should be able to tag the Sith's passive pain. And Electro does have the ability to turn himself into pure energy, so he could use that as well, but I don't see that happening. He hardly ever did that in all the stories I read concerning the character. And yeah, and his travel speed is not that impressive. His durability, like I said, is mainly the same as the Rhino, basically. Well, not the Rhino, the same as the people like the Hobgoblin, which took hits from like Ghost Rider and stuff like that. Fighters like that, basically. So Electro does have some durability feats, and he fights Spider-Man multiple times, takes hits from him. Of course, Spider-Man is always holding back when he fights Electro. Because he knows Electro's not that strong. He's not one of his more higher tier villains, but he is still dangerous, and Spider-Man does have to dodge his attacks. So we do need to keep that in mind. Final thing for Electro is that his travel speed was mentioned in one of the stories, in the start of one of the stories, and basically said that he basically bullets through the ink black air at 140 miles an hour, propelled by magnetic fields generated in the high tension power lines racing by below. And yeah, so his travel speed is 140 miles an hour. Not that impressive, slower than I believe a bullet, which is very bad. But in fights, usually travel speed doesn't really mean anything. It's not something you're really going to see. So it's not that important, but I thought I would mention it because it's pretty interesting that this was shown on panel and told to us that on how fast he was actually moving in his travel speed. You hardly ever get any travel speed statements, so I did want to mention that. Now going into the final Sinister Six member, which is very important, is Dr. Octopus, and this is where the feat of what I was talking about with Rhino being able to shatter Spider-Man's webs really easily, even when he's putting like tons of it on him, to be very impressive. Now, Doctor Octopus is a genius. He has a genius level intellect. He also has his four tentacles, basically, that can operate when they're off of his body, as long as he's close enough to them. He has like a psionic link to his tentacles, so he can have them controlled with just his mind. But this isn't very common, and usually he has them on him, so it's not that important, but did think I should mention it. Dr. Octopus constantly tagged Spider-Man. This is very impressive, considering that Spider-Man has had feats on panel to where he's able to react to light speed. This is very important, and the light speed feats that Spider-Man has had are light speed feats where he's dodging multiple beams of light, not just one single beam of light, but multiple beams of light at once. So that's very impressive, and even with these impressive feats, he's constantly tagged in almost every story and battle he has with Dr. Octopus. He cannot outspeed Dr. Octopus's tentacles. This is important. Dr. Octopus is able to block Electro's lightning bolts as well as Hobgoblin's pumpkin bombs as well, without even trying, even lighting a cigar and smoking while he's doing it, saying he could deflect them all day. And this is him before he had even had adamantium tentacles, so this is important considering adamantium tentacles are the ones we're using for this battle, and they're even stronger than this. And I'm not sure they're implied to be faster, but they are stronger. And yeah, Spider-Man states that, while he fights Dr. Octopus, that he doesn't feel like without his spider sense he'd be able to outblitz these tentacles. There's a huge chance that Dr. Octopus's tentacles are faster in speed than Spider-Man, which is crazy when considering, Spider-Man's light speed feats that he's had in his original runs, as well as, the stories that I'm reading for this video and the Sinister stories I read for this video. And yeah, like I said, Spider-Man getting tagged and not being able to break out of Dr. Octopus's tentacles is very important. His tentacles themselves breaking Spider-Man's webs like they're nothing multiple times, almost in every fight that they have, is impressive because Spider-Man, during a fight with the Hulk, basically wraps him up. And this is a Hulk that's very weakened and fatigued, and basically he had turned into Bruce Banner and then was turning back. And I guess in this era he had a weakness to where he didn't regain his full strength when he just changed back into the Hulk. So he ties him up, and he says that it's enough to tie up a bull elephant with his webbing, basically when he webs in this type of way. And it's very similar to the type of webbing he does on people like the Rhino and Dr. Octopus, two people that just rip out of it like it's nothing. Now, a bull elephant has, he's looking it up, how much these things weigh. At a low estimate, it's about 10,000 pounds to 12,000 pounds, maybe 14,000 pounds. But on a high end, at the highest amount it could be, is 16,000 pounds. Considering that Spider-Man is webbing up the Hulk, it's very safe to say he's going on the high end. So if we're highballing it, then Dr. Octopus's strength with his tentacles easily can break stuff that's 16,000 pounds. Which makes a lot of sense considering the stuff he does usually in his stories, breaking metal bars like they're nothing, and stuff like that. Even like, I think there was a part in one of the stories where he ripped this giant machine type object basically in half whenever it was coming at him after Spider-Man threw it. So this is very consistent to what Dr. Octopus has shown in multiple stories, and researching on how big and how much weight the rhino that Naruto threw. There was different estimates that I saw. One of the estimates was about 10,000 to 12,000 pounds. If this is correct, and that's a big if because there was so many different calculations that people have done. So if you have your own calculation, comment down below. Let me know how heavy this thing was, the giant rhino summoning that Pain did on Naruto, and Naruto and Seicho just threw it. But if it is 10 to 12,000 pounds, it's either the same on a low end for the bull elephant, or it's way lighter than the bull elephant that Spider-Man's talking about. And yeah, that sounds crazy because the bull elephant actually is real, and the rhino, a giant rhino, is not real. The giant rhino summoning, so I have no idea why they would be weaker or lighter than a real life animal. It makes no sense. But like I said, those calculations could be wrong. I didn't do them. I got them online. So if you know the real calculations or have a statement or something for Kishi, comment down below, let me know. That way I can get that right in the future if I ever have to talk about that feat again. But yeah, going off of that, it makes a lot of sense that Dr. Octopus is able to constantly just tag Spider-Man, and when Spider-Man is caught by these tentacles, be it adamantium tentacles or even his regular tentacles, he's able to basically overpower Spider-Man, and Spider-Man has to really think of how to get his attention somewhere else to break his focus so he can get out of these arms because they're almost unbreakable. And when they're adamantium tentacles, they are actually unbreakable. Doctor Octopus also fought in the water with Spider-Man in one comic, and with their first fight as the Sinister Six, they basically got in the water, and he still was able to move really well in the water. Now, Spider-Man was able to use a specific type of webbing that didn't dissolve in the water. He was able to trap Dr. Octopus with it. But that was a very special situation to where Dr. Octopus was literally in a giant like water bowl, basically like a fish bowl with Spider-Man. So it made sense that he would be able to be outmaneuvered by Spider-Man because Spider-Man's like a genius as well, and he figured out with Dr. Octopus in this small spot that he wouldn't be able to basically do much if he tied him up. And the water could be messing with Dr. Octopus's regular body. He's a regular human at the end of the day. Just his tentacles are super strong. And yeah, like I said, we see multiple instances where Spider-Man basically is trying to break out of the tentacles and can't. And if he can, it's only for a few seconds, and he has to try to think of something fast, because if he gets caught again, he might not be able to do it again. And he's constantly like fighting Dr. Octopus in a fast manner because he really cannot overpower him and has to take on his regular human body to get a quick knockout most of the times. And Spider-Man in that storyline, I believe it's called Ends of the Earth, or End of the Earth, I think it's Ends of the Earth, Dr. Octopus is dying, and he has a certain tentacles that are made out of carbonadium or something like that, and Spider-Man states that he can't break out of it. And again, we're talking about Spider-Man who is stronger than his webs. I mean, there's no doubt he has to be stronger than his webs. So we're talking about a Spider-Man that can literally has to be stronger than his webs, which would be definitely on a high end, over 16,000 pounds, and he cannot break these tentacles off of him. Now, he pushes past his limits and breaks out of them, but there's a lot of factors to that, being that Dr. Octopus was separated from his tentacles, so you can argue that his mind link wasn't together with it, so it's not as strong. At that point, it gave Spider-Man the opportunity, because it got weaker, to break out of it. Very possible, we don't know that for sure, but considering other stories and how the tentacles worked, it's very possible that because Dr. Octopus was focused on something else, and Spider-Man himself kind of like taunts Dr. Octopus, so it could show that Spider-Man was thinking that he had to get his mind off of the tentacles, that way he could break out of it. Very possible, but it's not really stated, so it's just a possibility. And yeah, as far as the adamantium tentacles go, which are the ones we're using for this battle, he was able to fight the entire other team members of the Sinister Six all at once. He's also able to fight the Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider, Deathlock, and I think the Hulk. He's basically fighting everyone, and the Thing, being part of Fantastic Four and almost as strong as the Hulk as well, if not the same as the Hulk, basically could not fight him. They were basically all getting attacked at once, showing the speed and the strength of Dr. Octopus. Like I said, Spider-Man has stated that without his spider sense, it's almost impossible to fight someone like Dr. Octopus, and he basically got beat into a pulp and thrown out like trash, basically. Dr. Octopus during this storyline also fought against the Hulk. Now, this wasn't a Hulk that's as strong as Hulk when he usually is, because he had the mind of Bruce Banner and not just Hulk, so that definitely weakens Hulk. But he did get beat really badly by Dr. Octopus with these adamantium arms. And even with Hulk weakened, he's still not like a pushover. It definitely should be up in the higher tiers of the Marvel heroes. And he got jobbed pretty bad by Dr. Octopus. So that's another feat that we have to talk about, in that, his durability is definitely something you would expect to be way above a pain body. So the fact that he's getting almost one-shotted, almost, he's basically just took a massive beating, wasn't able to do anything to Dr. Octopus, not even fight back, really shows that it's very possible that Dr. Octopus by himself, with these arms, his tentacles, have the speed and the power to basically fight a ton of Pains at once, and probably solo a Pain if they try to fight him one-on-one. Like I said, Dr. Octopus's biggest weakness, as we saw in that storyline, is that he is still a human. If he can bypass his tentacles, if you surprise him or get him into like a fearful state, as we saw at the end of that storyline with Sandman basically becoming glass and attacking Dr. Octopus while he was scared of him, basically, and he didn't really have time to react because he was kind of like in fear. Got one-shotted by this glass version of Sandman, who could have almost killed Dr. Octopus, considering he's just a human at the end of the day. And that's really the main weakness of Dr. Octopus, is that if you can bypass the tentacles, you can one-shot him because he's just a human at the end of the day. So that's very important, and it definitely is a win condition if if you can find a way for the pains to get past the tentacles, then it's possible for them to win the battle against Dr. Octopus. And yeah, that was the end for Dr. Octopus's portion. And now we need to talk about the battle and how I see it going. Now, before we start this, I want to say that Electro himself is immune to electricity, and that when fully charged, he charges himself, he can lift up to 500 pounds, so he could pick up the pains easily, just like Naruto and Seijo could with the Rhino, the giant Rhino. He could do that with the actual pains, do a similar feat to just like body slam them or whatever he needs to do. He'll have a physical advantage over every pain there if he can charge the full power. And they don't do like a water style or something like that. And one last thing with Electro that needs to be stated is that Electro's voltage can go from 10,000 in his base to about, I think it's like 1 million. It's either 1 million or 10 million, but we'll say 1 million. So it's like 10,000 in base, and then as he's powering up, he can reach his maximum, which is like 1 million volts. And even 10,000 volts sounds like it would take out a pain and a one-shot it, but 1 million, 100% would one-shot a pain. There's no way they're surviving that type of electricity and voltage. But yeah, now that's being said, and with the voltage and that, how do I see the fight going? So the Six Paths of Pain are a group, they're a unit. Same thing as Sinister Six. It's going to be a team battle. Now, I do think that with the Pains, and I mentioned this during my Jiraiya versus Pain fight, if I think he could beat the Pains. The problem with the Pains is that a lot of the Pains are fodder. The ones that revive are only good for that purpose, revival. So if they are taken out before they can fulfill that purpose, then you're basically down to 4 Pains. And that's very possible considering the people they're fighting. Rhino should be able to tank almost any attack, be it summonings, be it elemental attacks like elemental jutsus. The almighty push itself was able to be withstand by six-tailed Naruto. Very possible that Rhino's just going to go through that, or just be stopped, momentarily before he can go and charge at the Pain, who Pain himself says that he needs 5 seconds to reload. If he gets tagged by Rhino, he's getting one-shotted. Considering that Rhino, in a surprise attack, knocked Spider-Man down on his feet, basically, and he couldn't do nothing for a few panels. Spider-Man has way more durability shown in his comics than anything. Like, even in his rookie days, he has more durability than the Pains. So if Rhino can do that to Spider-Man, 100% they're getting one-shotted. So they have to take Rhino out in order to win. The two powerhouses, Rhino and Dr. Octopus, are the most dangerous ones for one-shotting. Electro is different because Electro, you could argue, since his attacks are lightning speed, very possible for them to dodge his attacks. So that's important. And if they do, then Electro won't be as much of a threat if they take him out using water jutsu. So that's possible. As far as Sandman, very similar, but Sandman stated you have to have more water than his sand in order to take him out like that. So you would have to argue that they have more water with their water jutsu. That was never shown by Pain. So that's a huge assumption and probably would not actually happen. So it would come down to a fight, but I do think that they might be able to take out Sandman in other means. If they use fire, that's not the same as water and could turn Sandman into glass. So that's very possible, and that could be a win condition for them for Sandman. So that goes both ways. When it comes to Mysterio, Mysterio can be one-shotted if he gets tagged, but that will only happen if they can figure out where he's at and where the illusions are taking place, and that's if they don't attack each other and take each other out and take some of their bodies out. Even if they figure it out, but they've already taken out certain bodies, and if those bodies are, I forgot which ones they are, the ones that revive, basically. the Naraka path and the outer path. If those two are accidentally taken out because of Mysterio's illusions, then and they attack themselves and take each other out, then if even one of those pains gets taken out, the revival process cannot happen and they're basically screwed. So Mysterio is very important for the win condition for the Sinister Six. If Mysterio gets tagged instantly or even early into the fight, then they won't have that advantage the Sinister Six. So it's important on which way that goes, and that's how the battle will kind of be determined. Because Mysterio is very important for determining the outcome of the battle. Because if you negate the revival ability, then it's going to be a harder fight for the Pains, 100%. So, like I said, Mysterio very important. Now, when it comes to the next person, the Hobgoblin, Hobgoblin is so important because he has the mobility of the air. Basically, he's able to fight an aerial battle, which a lot of the Pains can't. They would have to rely on the summoning, the animal path, basically to summon creatures to allow them to fight in the air. If he's able to tag the Pains with his pumpkin bombs, they haven't shown building level durability, so they're getting one-shotted. Unless you're going to argue that the Rasengan has the power capability that's higher than a building, basically, which we've never seen in Naruto, that they're on that level. At least the base Razengans, not on that level, should be getting one-shotted by those pumpkin bombs. Again, that's if they tag the Pains. It's very possible that they can dodge the pumpkin bombs, so we can't say that's an automatic win condition. As well as their Sparkle Beam or Sparkle Blast, Hobgoblin can do that, but we don't know if they're going to tag the Pains. If they do tag them, I don't see it vaporizing them. I do see it stunning them. But his main win condition is getting those pumpkin bombs off on the Pains and just staying in the air and having that aerial advantage over them. So Hobgoblin can be taken out by the Pains by force if they need to. He has a high durability percentage, considering that he took hits from some of Marvel's top players and was still willing to fight. Wasn't even like shown to be tired or anything like that in the stories I read. And I haven't even read that much of Hobgoblin, so he probably has even crazier feats than what I'm going off of. But by what I read, Hobgoblin definitely can take a punch, and it would take a lot. It would probably take some hats, like the soul absorption ability. You would need something like that in order to just take him out instantly. And yeah, I believe that was the human path that can do that. The human path could take him out if he grabs his hand on him, and Hobgoblin doesn't have the speed or the strength to basically just knock the human path off. That's very possible. The summonings, if they gained up on Hobgoblin, it's very possible to take him out of the air, and then if he's out of the air, he's going to be at a massive disadvantage. So that's possible. But again, it depends on if you think that Pain will actually do that. If he's in character, he probably won't, and he'll be too late by the time they figure out that they need to be doing that type of stuff against Hobgoblin. But if that does happen, it is possible to take out Hobgoblin if you can get him on the ground and then kind of like gained up on him and stuff like that. So, but as far as one-on-ones go, it's going to be very hard to beat Hobgoblin considering his Sparkle Beams move at the speed of light. They're not going to be able to dodge that. And his Hobgoblin Pumpkin Bombs are going to one-shot the Pains if he lands even one or a few of them on a Pain body. So, no matter which Pain body it is, it's getting one-shotted, as we saw with Naruto was able to one-shot these Pains with just pure physical force and Razengans, as well as Rasen Shurikens, stuff like that. But overall, Hobgoblin definitely can take any of the Pains with his attacks, 100%. Now going to the final one, which is Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is very important. He's the most strongest member of their group, hands down. He's the smartest member of their group, hands down. Dr. Octopus basically has the speed feats to block multiple attacks at once by various members of the Sinister Six. He literally blocked the Pumpkin Bombs as well as Electro's lightning bolts instantly, and they were throwing multiple of their attacks against Dr. Octopus, and he was just dodging them while lighting a cigarette and smoking in front of him, saying that he could dodge their attacks all day. It's not going to matter. So he wasn't worried at all. And considering that Dr. Octopus is a regular human, and he's not afraid of one of these attacks going through his arms and just one-shotting him and killing him, is very impressive. It shows that he has no doubt that he's able to just constantly dodge and parry these attacks, 100%. So attacks on that level aren't even a threat to someone like Dr. Octopus. And it requires you to do a massive blast in order for him to get knocked off balance or to be stunned, and his human body to be stunned basically, and staggering and stuff like that. Then you might be able to get the win on him. But he has to be like a giant blast, and we haven't seen nothing from Pain that is like that, other than I think Pain, when he was Nagato in the war arc, he was going to do like this laser beam attack with his Ashura path ability. But we never got to see the full extent of what that would have looked like, I think. So it's hard to speculate on that, and I don't want to speculate on stuff we don't know. So only by what we saw, there should be nothing Pain can do that's going to be on that level of what would be needed to stagger Dr. Octopus's main human body. And as far as the tentacles go, it's hard to say that there's anything Pain could do in any of his sets past bodies that would actually get through to Dr. Octopus's actual body. It would have to come to a physical fight. And as we saw with Naruto when he fought Pain in a physical combat sense, Naruto, once acquiring Sage Mode, Tendo Pain was able to swap hands with him, so he got Sage Mode, and then he just completely like knocked Pain away. Which, again, Sage Mode Naruto has nowhere near the type of strength feats that Spider-Man has in his comics, as well as what Dr. Octopus has shown fighting against people like the Hulk, and basically just treat him like he's nothing. Again, Hulk wasn't what he usually is. He was weakened, so he was Bruce Banner's mind, not the Hulk's mind. That matters because of his anger and that being the source of his power. But the fact is that Dr. Octopus basically treated Hulk like he was nothing, and treated Spider-Man like he was nothing as well, and basically beat both of them easily with his adamantium arms. And even when he doesn't have adamantium arms, he still is shown to constantly just beat Spider-Man and speed blitz him, as well as just being stronger than him. Spider-Man usually gets lucky in his fights with Dr. Octopus, and again has to find some way to bypass the tentacles to get to his human body and then one-shot Dr. Octopus. Again, to say it's impossible would be wrong, because there definitely has to be a way that Pain could get in there and one-shot Dr. Octopus. But it's just hard to figure out what that thing would be when Dr. Octopus, in his stories and in the panels and feats I've shown you, has done things against people that are way stronger, way faster than anything Pain has done in his fight with Naruto. Even Nagato in the war arc would get one-shotted by this Dr. Octopus. But yeah, and Dr. Octopus is just insane. Like I said, he's mainly the main dude in these stories, and he's shown to be super intelligent, constantly being the one to make the plans and putting the plans into motion, even getting the other team members to know how to use their powers in an effective way against their opponents and the teams they're going up against. And even, almost killed Spider-Man in multiple instances. Dr. Octopus is insane. And he's been insane since he was first introduced. And he's always kept that type of menacing aura around him and how him and his tentacles work and stuff like that. And like I said, he's also able to control them while they're off his body, but we're not doing that in this fight. We're kind of seeing them just on his body, fighting with his adamantium tentacles. And even if you don't want to give him that, you say just regular tentacles, they still scale above anything Pain could really do. So yeah, so overall, as far as the fight goes, like I said, I think that there are win conditions for Pain. And as you could tell when I was going through the sits past of Pain as well as going through the Sinister sits, almost every member of both sides have their weaknesses. And if those weaknesses are exploited, that side would lose. So really, when you're arguing the sits past of Pain versus the Sinister sits, it's in this version of Sinister sits that I'm putting together, there's way different versions of Sinister sits, and maybe one day we'll go through a different version that has like Kraven and the Lizard and stuff like that, because those are interesting villains as well. But one day we'll talk about them in a Sinister sits fight. But both of them have their weaknesses. Both of them could win the battle. In actuality, if those weaknesses are exploited and the Sits past of Pain were able to take out a good amount of members of the Sinister Sits right off the bat, they would have more time to exploit the weaknesses of Dr. Octopus, of Rhino, and of Electro, Mysterio, like I said, is very important, but it's very possible they could be found out, as he is most of the storylines that I read. So if that happens, I wouldn't consider him one of the top people, other than his smoke screen ability that he has. That's very important, but other than that, no. As you know, it's really going to be the powerhouses of the group that are the ones that need to be taken out. So if all the other people are taken out, it's just those three against, like, let's say the Six Paths of Pain, then they have a better win condition to get to than if it was 3-on-3. And that's mainly what this fight is. It's about numbers. If it's an even fight, it's in the Sinister Six's favor just because of how overpowered and how fast they are, their feats. And how strong they are. Basically, with people like Rhino and Electro being able to one-shot Pains 100%, it's very doable. That it's very possible that they're gonna win that. But if you can take out the three members and have your full sets, then they might be able to out-hats the Sinister Six members if they can lower their numbers very fast. And that's just how I see the fight going. Overall, it comes down to personal opinion. Whoever you are, you're going to have different opinions on how you see this fight going. You can say that, Electro is going to do tons of different lightning blasts, and one of them's going to attack the Pains, and the Pains are going to get one-shotted. Stuff like that. You could say that Pains can do a massive almighty push like he did against Gamabunta, and that force alone might be able to push back or kill some of the Sinister Six members. There's multiple scenarios that we can go through with these groups of people going into a fight with each other. But that's the good thing about versus battles and these type of debates, is that different people are going to have different interpretations on how they see the fight going. People are going to root for, different teams and that. So, depending on what team you're going for, you're going to try making, arguments for why that team would win. And I think that's the interesting thing about versus battles, that usually, on my verses, I do get some comments where they give their opinion on why they think this character would beat this character. And I think that this battle, considering a group of characters, is definitely more tricky than, let's say, a one-on-one battle that I usually do on this channel. So, it did take a lot of reading. Going to the end of this video, now that we've talked about, who I think would win, I do want to say that I do want you to comment down below your thoughts, your theories on how a fight between this version that I put of the Sinister Six would do against the Six Paths of Pain. I would like to hear your thoughts. Why would you think who would win? If you think the Six Paths would win, why do you think they would win? How do you think their hats, abilities would work against the Sinister Six? And for people that do read comments, or know about the Sinister Six members, do you think I'm right in that they would probably take the fight, or do you think that they wouldn't take the fight? Let me know. These type of videos, the versus comments versus the Naruto verse, are really fun to do, because a lot of Naruto fans don't read comments, so I think it's really fun to bring the feats and also talk about some of these moments that I really enjoy reading about whenever I get to read this material for myself, and then I bring it into these versus battles for you guys so that y'all can enjoy and join the discussion on who would win in these fights. But yeah, I think that's very interesting. And overall, I do think that, doing versus battles like this that have tons of different characters are just very chaotic, but also fun. Because there's literally infinite ways that the fight can go, depending on which character would take out the other character and how all the different pieces fall, basically. Like I said earlier in the video, if you were to look at the power members or the fodder members, and we talked about that in the beginning of the video about which Pains I thought were fodder Pains, and which Pains I think will actually be able to put up a challenge against the Sinister Six. I think that's very important, as well as the Sinister Six members giving their losing situations, and their weaknesses. And I think, with the fight with the Paths of Pain versus Sinister Six, with those weaknesses that the Sinister Six have, the Six Paths of Pain being able to use all different chakra natures, I think that was stated in the story. I know Naruto can, but I believe his pains can as well. But if they can, then that's completely different. But if they can, then I think it's pretty interesting that you can use those elements to basically try to negate and exploit the weaknesses of some of the sensor sixes that are elemental based, such as Electro and Sandman. So I do think that that was really fun to bring into the battle because it is a possibility. But at the same time, you have those people that are have those exploits be way stronger in their attack capacity, basically, to the pain. So it's really on who hits who first. And I really like battles like that, and I think those are the most interesting battles that I can talk about on the channel. And yeah, I think that that will probably do it for today's video. Overall, I think the Sinister Six would be Six Paths of Pain. But leave a comment down below what you think, how you see this battle going. As always, leave a like on the video to show your support. That always helps the channel. As well as share the video if you can. It helps grow the channel as we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers hopefully by June. That's the goal that I want for the channel. And yeah, if you're new to the channel, guys, I am Comic Class. I review trade paperbacks / volume reviews. That's our main thing on the channel that we like to do. We also do power scaling videos of Marvel, DC, sometimes indie comics like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Very big TMNT fan on this channel, and I am covering the stories, the comics on the channel, different comic runs. So be sure to subscribe if you're a TMNT fan. We do that. We also do versus battles. I recently did a Delta versus Madara video, so we are doing Naruto versus battles. But the main thing on the channel as regarding versus battles is the comic book characters versus Naruto verse videos. Those are my favorite ones to make. Because it's just really fun to go over how the Narutoverse stacks up against different comic book characters. So if you're a fan of this video, you really enjoyed the idea and the concept, and you enjoyed how I presented this argument of this hypothetical battle between these two teams to you, be sure to subscribe because we're going to be doing more of them. I already have a few versus battles already in mind that I'm going to be starting to work on regarding combat characters versus the Narutoverse. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because we are going to be doing more of these. This is going to be hopefully twice a month or 3 times a month. I'm hoping for, if I can do it the way I want. I want to drop at least 3 versus battles in a month regarding the combat characters versus Narutoverse, because they're very fun to make. But, like I said, we have tons of different material on the channel, and there's even times where I'll do things like discussion videos of things that are happening in the comic book world. If the topic's very important and kind of changes the comic book world, then I'll usually talk about it. And, so we do some discussion videos on the channel regarding comic book news, like comic book news that affects people, the industry, or, comic book runs that we're currently checking out or might check out, as well as, comic book writers and stuff like that regarding them. So we do that on the channel as well, but that's pretty important for me to cover it. Mainly, we just stick to the trade paperback / volume reviews being the main thing on the channel, as well as the power skills and the versus battles. Those are just all fun to do, and I really enjoy having a variety of content on the channel. I'm trying to become more consistent with getting the content out for you guys. Like I said, I'm already working on the next set of videos, and we're going to have a whole new set of videos for people that follow my trade paperback / volume reviews. Right now we're covering the Spider-Man comic books. Right now we already had finished the first run. We're on his second run of comic books right now, so if you haven't already, go check out that playlist. It'll be in the end card at the end of this video. And yeah, everything seems good. We're recently hit 300 subscribers, so I want to say thank you for that. And this is the 200th video special. I wanted this to be the 200th video. When I found out that I was going to hit the 200th mark, I decided that this was going to be the video that we were going to use. Because it was a video I really wanted to make, an idea that I thought was pretty original, that I hadn't seen before, and I wanted to bring it to you guys and my thoughts on who I thought would win this hypothetical battle and this versus battle. So Hope you guys enjoyed it. Congratulations, for the 200th video, and hopefully we're gonna make more of them in the future, and hopefully we hit a great new milestone in the future as well. So I want to say thank you for 200 videos that we have made so far, and for y'all for watching them, as well as growing the channel, and for us hitting 300 subscribers about, I think it was like a week ago. But yeah, until next video, guys, God bless you. Until the next lesson, keep on reading those comments.